As an aspiring medical student in America, I understand that there's going to be a lot of work necessary and studying in order to continue this career pathway. And in preparation for that, coming from someone who'd much rather spend their time playing video games until 2 in the morning rather than studying for a big exam, I managed to develop these focused study habits that I personally use in order to stay more on track. So, hey everyone, my name's Alan Mai, and I'm pretty much your basic run-of-the-mill high schooler going through school. And something that I see among all my peers, no matter how smart or talented or whatever you are, is that everyone seems to struggle with finding the motivation and being able to focus once you actually start studying. You know, especially since we have all of our phones and stuff, it's really hard to not just endlessly scroll through Instagram or TikTok or whatever instead of studying with the textbook that's right in front of you. So to combat that, here are 5 tips that I personally make use of whenever I'm trying to focus whether I'm studying or working or whatever. So tip number 1 is what is called the Pareto Principle, or some may call it the 80-20 rule. So basically, the Pareto Principle, as Wikipedia defines it, is for many outcomes, roughly 80% of the consequences come from 20% of the causes. This basically means that I can expect 80% of my outcomes to come from 20% of my efforts. This helps us in 2 main ways. First, this helps you understand the relationship between your grades and what you're studying for. Meaning you can get a pretty solid understanding of the topic as a whole as long as you're focusing down and studying the core basics and foundations. As long as you know 20% of your topic, which would be like the core basics and foundations, you'd be able to understand and comprehend 80% of the rest of the topic. We could also use the 80-20 rule by applying a structure to how often we take breaks and when we're supposed to study. By using the 80-20 rule, we can map out how often we're supposed to take breaks and whatnot by saying 80% of the time should be focused on working, while 20% of the time should be used on breaks. And there are different ways you could apply this rule depending on how often you want to take breaks. One example would be splitting up a 30-minute time period with the 80-20 rule, meaning that 25 minutes would be spent actually working, while 5 minutes would be spent on having a break. There's a lot of different ways you can split up the 80-20 rule depending on how long you're willing to study. For example, for 1 hour you would spend 48 minutes on studying and 12 minutes on having a break. In my opinion, the greatest benefit of using the 80-20 rule is that it prevents burnout because you're structuring your workflow so that you take breaks where it's needed and you're working really hard when you have to. It keeps me from taking too long of breaks so that I feel like I'm wasting more time than I'm actually studying, and it really helps from burnout. So I would definitely recommend the 80-20 rule when it comes to balancing your workflow. Following up with the 80-20 rule, what's also really important is making sure that you use a timer when you're taking these breaks or when you're studying for a long period of time. I'm sure you've been in this situation before where you tell yourself, oh, I'm just going to take a 5 to 10 minute phone break, and then you look up from your phone and it's 11 p.m. To prevent this from happening, just do something simple like setting an alarm for like 5 to 10 minutes when you do decide to take those breaks. That way you're always reminded and you don't get carried away sitting on your phone or on YouTube. Seriously though, it's really going to help you stay on track because you're not going to lose track of time or anything like that because, you know, your phone's going to remind you anyways. Tip number 3 is to add friction. Friction is the force that resists the relative motion or tendency to such motion of 2 bodies or substances in contact. So this is a pretty long-winded and complicated explanation for something that's actually really easy to understand. Basically, everybody has a natural tendency to get distracted. And instead of trying to completely destroy that habit by like deleting Instagram or like deleting all games off your computer, we could do what I call adding friction to those distractions so that you're less likely to go to them. So by that definition, the more friction we add to our distractions, the more effort it's going to take for us to get to that point where we're distracted, because it's taking more effort to be distracted. Without friction, it'd be way easier to go from being productive to being distracted because of how smooth that in-between transition is, because there's no friction. Look, here's an example. If I knew that I would be easily distracted by my phone by leaving it right on my desk, that would tell me that there's not enough friction on my phone. It's too easy to get distracted. To remedy this, I'd move my phone to the other side of the room where I'd have to get up to go get it, and also turn off all the notifications aside from the urgent ones. By doing this, it creates more friction for me to go all the way over there to get my phone because, you know, honestly, we're all lazy people. I cannot be bothered. By doing this and by putting my phone on the other side of the room, it creates friction between me and the distraction, meaning that I'm less likely to get distracted by my phone because, well, it's all the way on the other side of my room. If I want to get distracted, I'd have to go up and get it, as opposed to if it was just sitting on my desk. Applying this idea of friction to your workflow greatly decreases the chances of you being distracted because, well, there's more effort for you to be distracted, so it's not going to happen as often. Keeping up with the idea of friction, another important piece is to stay away from your bed. Like that thing right there. Multiple studies show that lying in your bed too often can make you really unproductive and lethargic. It can also increase the amount of stress you're going under, like in a study conducted by the University of Tokyo. Look, I know how comfy it is to just lie in your bed, like watching YouTube or doing your homework, but trust me, you're gonna get less done because of it. What I do to counteract this is that I either just make my bed or just throw a bunch of books and clothes onto my bed, because now I can't even lie down on my bed in the first place without having to clean all that stuff up. And because I'm lazy, I'm more inclined to just sit at my desk and just work. Tip number 5 is using a checklist while you're studying. This sounds really simple, but most people usually think like, oh, I'm just going to study for 2 hours and then I'll be good, rather than studying based on their understanding. This is a huge problem because when it comes to studying, you're setting yourself a limit based on time rather than your actual understanding. By creating a checklist, you could study based on your complete understanding of the things on that list rather than just studying for time. For example, if I needed to study the first few topics of computer science for a review, instead of just spending 2 hours and just thinking, oh, I'm good for the test or whatever I have next, I'd rather create a checklist and go down the list and making sure I check off based off on how well I understand the subject. This way, studying isn't really restricted to the time frame I set for myself. It's more based on how well I understand the subject. Setting up a checklist also helps you build momentum towards your productivity. As you're checking things off the checklist, you're feeling better and better about yourself based on your understanding, and you have a very clear indication of how much progress you're making. It helps build momentum towards you working on other stuff too. The checklist basically helps you display your progress, which keeps you on track. Okay, so here's a quick bonus tip. Well, it's not really like a tip. It's more like something I just do. I keep a stress ball around, just lying around on my desk, and that actually helps me a lot with staying focused because, you're sitting, you're not doing anything with your hands, you're just reading from a textbook. It could be really tempting to like go pick up your phone or go pick up like something else. Just keeping a stress ball around, just squeezing it like this between my hands while I'm reading, it definitely decreases the likelihood of me picking up my phone or picking up something else that isn't going to help me at all. Just having like a stress ball or some type of fidget toy to default to definitely helps you from picking up something else that would distract you. Even if you don't have a stress ball, for example, I picked up pen twirling. So even if I don't have my stress ball with me, I'll always have a pencil or pen with me. So I'll just do this, maybe it's in class, maybe it's like during studying, whatever. I just twirling away, and it keeps me from fidgeting with anything else. So there you have it. That's 5 tips plus a bonus for how to study without losing focus. If you found this video enjoyable or helpful, please feel free to just drop a like or drop a share. That way I could get a kick out of spilling all my studying secrets onto the internet. And hey, maybe if none of these tips were helpful or you have other tips to add, feel free to comment below and I'll read them. If you want other lifestyle and productivity content, please hit the subscribe button. It helps me out a lot because I'm doing this out of my own will, and helping you guys study. It's all out of my own free time, And while you're here, if you want to watch more, you should check out this video where I walked 50,000 steps in a day, because that was really fun. Thanks for tuning in to my study tips, and I'll see you guys next time.